Welcome to On Air with Kash. Our guest today, you know from Beverly Hills Pawn, God's Not Dead, and BASEketball. She's the host of the podcast, The Cory Oliver Effect. Please welcome actress, beauty expert, and entrepreneur, Cory Oliver.
Hello, Kash Hovey. How are you? I actually should be introing you. And because, honestly, we could go on and on about you, but good morning. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited. We've had a long history of running into each other, right, at different events, and as well as working with the same people. It's probably much like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right?
Exactly.
Have you ever worked with him, by the way?
I haven't worked with Kevin yet,
Okay.
but I think we put a few of our...
We're all together, yeah.
We'll probably get linked in about 2 or 3, I think.
I know. And I can't say, Kash, that I have won LA Best Actor. So well done, you. That congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment.
Well, thank you. And, I everything you're doing. We just kind of rolled with it. We've taken different career paths. I just love how, starting off with some of the same producers, working with the same people. And then we both were like, hey, we got our own podcasts now.
It's amazing. And I think back then when we were starting out, I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure you can attest to this too, that we didn't have the resources that we have now. And it's grown so much, and actors are able to get out there on a different level, and it's just so interesting to see where it's come from. I was probably much before you. I was black and white pictures. We didn't have color pictures.
My first headshots probably around 15, and I do have black and white ones. Yeah.
Oh, insert here. You have to insert that here.
I'm always ready for these situations. Yeah.
All right. But I think people, along the way, and I'm all over the place. So I'm so excited to talk to you because I love your energy and I've watched your stuff, and I think you're an amazing person. And finding that in this business is, there's a lot of amazing people in this business, but you're just I always say this, a good egg. And so I'm excited to be here with you today. But I was watching the Katharine Hepburn documentary. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, but I think you'd find it very interesting. And just where Hollywood in general was back then and how far it's come and how much it's changed and is continuing to change is incredible to me. And I'm sure you can, agree that it's exciting. And also you kind of get a little bit like, wow, this whole AI thing's coming on the scene. So are they going to dupe us? Are they going to have us somewhere else at another time, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you're bringing this up because AI keeps popping up. I'm actually working on a movie right now that has to do with AI. Wow. And I was talking to a buddy of mine. We're like the same age, we grew up loving a lot of the same things. And we're just talking about even you go to Universal now, there's no Back to the Future ride, no ET ride. And you're like, that's so a part of Universal history. Those are the things that we remember from our childhood. And then it's, and again, like, look, don't get me wrong. I love The Simpsons. I love all the new films, love Harry Potter. But there is this sense of, even when we look back to like so many great comedies of like the 90s or the 20th century films, and you look at so many things are rebooting now. Even I think it was Tom Hanks who said something about they'll be able to make movies long after he's gone with AI. And my thing is, do you really want to see like a Mission Impossible AI where Tom Cruise isn't really doing the stunts?
I agree with you. And I think such a good question. And I remember talking with a friend 25 years ago where he actually mentioned this, and I'm thinking, no, they'll never be able to do that. And here we are. Oh, yeah. So we'll see, where it goes. And I think it's just going to be interesting and exciting as well.
And actually, that reminds me, there was an Entourage episode. I think they were doing pre-production on Aquaman, and James Cameron jokes, in about 5 more. This is like in the mid 2000s. Oh, in 5 years, we're not even going to need to use actors anymore. And then there's an uncomfortable pause. Just kidding. But that's nearly 20 years ago. So I hope that's not the case. And I want to get back to you because it's like, you're just someone who, I feel like I grew up watching, you were in some of my favorite movies growing up, like Dead Man on Campus, of course, BASEketball. And you've worked with God's Not Dead, David A.R. Wright, who I've gotten to know recently. I remembered being on set with you for the Red Skeleton. I know, we're both, as actors, we're like in the zone. So I could tell you were reading your thing and you looked very familiar. And then it was like, I was like, of course, I know exactly who you are. The interesting thing about with us and the Zucker brothers is, so, I think I was like 9 years old. My mom was working on Naked Gun 3. And so I go with my mom to work. And again, I have a spiky mullet, I have a vest. And then it was like, hey, do you want to put Kash in? And so, we're on set and it's the grocery store scene where Leslie Nielsen, he's retired, but he has a flashback when there's a robbery. So you see me and my mom kind of getting, they're like, here, Michelle, will you play his mom? And so then you can see my mom's reaction, my spiky mullet, but I had a line that got cut. I remember being at the premiere and back. But it was like, for me, that was a surreal experience too, because I remember going to the premiere and like early on in the movie, they did this Untouchables parody, and like the babies are going down and OJ's catching them like footballs, and he does like the Heisman dance. And my mom was explaining to me, oh, that's the joke is, OJ was this big football star. Now, this is about 3 months before
Wow.
the Bronco chase,
Yes.
everything. And it was so surreal because Robert Kardashian Sr. introduced my parents to each other. I had just met him around that time. So I'm watching him read the suicide note that OJ left before the Bronco chase. And he's on TV with Robert Shapiro, whose kids I'm going to school with. It was so weird. Why did I start off like doing that movie and link to that? So it's when I talk about like kind of worlds paralleling, I mean, that was kind of my first intro,
That is wild. That's so
yeah.
wild. And to speak to that, interestingly enough, at the same time, this dates me to you, like I'm way older than you, but at the same time, I was actually doing hair and makeup on the Home and Family show for Candace Garvey, who was very good friends with Nicole Brownson.
Yes.
And so, there was a lot of stuff in that trailer that went on that we heard, but I will not divulge because I am, but you realize how small the world is. And that movie, talking about BASEketball.
Yes.
BASEketball, yes.
Before we get to that, I just have to add another parallel. I went to Steve Garvey's baseball camp when I was in second. That's sorry. Just had to throw that in there too.
By the way, Kash is one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. He's
I shook his hand. I know I got a picture.
Such a lovely man. I love him. He used to show up on the set and he just adores Candace. And yeah, it's such a small world, isn't it? We could probably go on for like 5 hours, but.
Oh yeah. So that year when BASEketball comes out, Matt and Trey, South Park had just been put on the map. I remember there was like t-shirts of the South of like Kenny and Cartman and everything. And then I remembered my younger brother was the one, oh, Kash, we got to watch this. And then I just, even the first 5, I'm like, they can actually say that on TV. And this is like, the late 90s. And it was the one where Cartman's asking about his dad. And it's just, and I couldn't believe some of the stuff they were saying, and that my brother was getting these jokes. And I'm like, my little brother's, I'm like, should I be the responsible older brother here? Or is it okay that it just seems so instantaneous? Because months later, it's the two of them and their first, and this is a live feature film that's done by
David Zucker. I mean, and for those of you listening, David Zucker, he did Airplane and Police Academy, and like the Zucker brothers were these huge, successful directors at the time and still are. And so I'll tell you the story about that because it's a very interesting story. And I'd like to set the record straight on the show today. This is like breaking news because I've never really talked about this anywhere. But my agent called me and she told me to, go, I have an audition for you. It's with the Zucker brothers. And it was a few lines. And I showed up and I was the complete opposite look of everybody in the room. Complete. They sometimes will say, we want blonde hair and we want, big busted or whatever. And I was opposite. And so I sat there and I was listening to the audition and I could hear people in there. And I thought, I'm going to have to try to do something a little different. I'm going to say some of these. You only have a few lines. So when you only have a few lines, it's difficult to jump in and really show yourself, right? And so I went in and I made them laugh, and I had no idea, zero idea that David Zucker was in there. He was behind the camera, so I had no idea. And apparently, if you can make him laugh in the audition, you got the part. And so I did, and I got the part, and I had no idea as well that they would be there. It wasn't in the script. It wasn't in the script that they were going to find I don't even want to say the word on a significant device, I'll say.
Right, yeah.
And so that reaction was authentic. And I really was like, what are you doing? What, get out of here. I was like, what are, that was like, they did that so I would have an authentic reaction. However, being raised in a Christian home, telling my mom to go watch the movie, I was like, oh no. So she kind of laughed and said, thank gosh you were in the first 10 minutes. But I hate using this word, but it's kind of not a cult classic, but it's a classic movie in the industry. It had Al Michaels, who I ended up working with his son, Steve Michaels, years later on the show Beverly Hills Pawn. It had a lot of people, and Matt Stone and Trey Parker are geniuses, just hands down geniuses. I showed up weeks later to do the ADR, and I asked them, how's it going? And they said they just wrote Dumb and Dumber in like 4 days. But they're just so brilliant and fun to work with, nice people. Just I really had a good time on that shoot, and I was grateful for the movie, and we had fun. So it's the 25th anniversary coming up, and so I posted about it on my Instagram. So I thought, well, I've never posted anything from that movie.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's great.
Do you know the line that you said, or what you exactly said that made Zucker laugh, that made you get the part?
I think it was like they were rummaging through my mom's room, and I was like, what are you doing in my mom's room? And then there was this big giant tent underwear.
Oh,
and I was just the way I said it, and he just laughed. It was really one line, or one or two lines that I made my own.
so during that scene, it was those two lines, the way that you said it, that was authentic, and that made Zucker laugh. I'm like, okay, this is our girl.
Yeah, yes. And again, it's just to speak to actors and actresses. Like, you might go in a room and it can really get in your head. I'm sitting here with a stereotype, something they've asked for, right? I don't fit the mold, but it doesn't mean it's over. You make it your own. They don't know exactly what they want. Just go in there and stay consistent, and bring your spirit and the character that you've created, and do your best. Because as you know, sitting in that room, you're sitting around, you're looking at people, it can kind of mess with your head a little bit. But that day was a great day, and I'm so grateful to have been able to work with them. I was a huge fan of theirs as well. I watched, Airplane. I mean, who doesn't? That's like another classic.
No, even like, it was like Airplane, obviously the Naked Gun movies, but even one of their other ones, Ruthless People, with Danny DeVito and Bette Midler. I was watching that with my parents when I was a little kid, and like looking at that, like the jokes go over your head. But I remember watching again when I was like 12. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was watching this with my parents when I was like a little kid.
Yes, yeah. So I think it was, definitely had a great time on it. There was one moment where we were all kind of waiting to film. It's 90% waiting, 10% filming, right?
Yeah.
I hear this beautiful Bach on the piano, and I walked into the house that we were filming in, and it was Matt Stone playing, and I'm like, these guys are just amazing. It's just follow them around with a camera. They're just so talented and incredible. I have memories of it. It was beautiful and a wonderful time, and I'm grateful for it.
That's amazing, because it's like, I remember, I'm just like that too, like the 6 Days to Air, and you watch like how their minds work, and just even South Park 25 years later as well. I mean, it's just so many of the things that they tackle are so relevant. They execute the point. And I mean, it's one of those things too, where, I look at you and it's like, okay, you're saying, okay, you weren't the part. I mean, Cory, you're beautiful. You so are that part. So I mean, whatever, maybe it was, but then you're beautiful. You have the talent. You are Brittany Kaiser. Okay, so it's like you went in there getting the role. Matt and Trey, they play Cooper and Reamer. They're two guys who really haven't matured since elementary school. Let's just face it. They show up. Everyone's graduated from college. Everyone's moving on. They haven't matured. They kind of realize, okay, everyone's moving on with their lives. What are we doing? And your party, they're like rejected by everyone, but that's where they invent the game BASEketball that ends up giving them their career.
Yes, and a little fun fact: I believe that the first 10 minutes of the movie, they had been done filming principal photography, and I guess they weren't happy with the beginning of it, so they rewrote this whole part that involved Brittany Kaiser, and she was the it girl, and I was like, what are you guys doing here? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Right? Like,
on the guest list. Oh, we heard that from him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just was, even though it just shows you, even though there's just a few lines, like they can be really important and really impact people. And so
you hosted the party where BASEketball was created. Come on, you're Brittany Kaiser. You're the popular girl.
And they had me in, this is kind of a lot of information, but they had me in this blue kind of dress that had, like, I don't know what they were straps, but I literally had nothing. And so I've talked about this before. We duct taped myself. I had a great time. I had such a great time.
Love it.
Those were the days.
And then I know you mentioned Matt and the piano. Was there in BASEketball, they're inventing the game as they go. They're just, first it starts off as horse, and they're trying to sound sophisticated. Was there any just like fun improv memory that you have?
Just really funny. And what I loved about them, because I have a best friend that I've had since 5th grade, a long time ago. And what I loved about them is they had this unspoken bond that you could see on camera and with each other. And I don't know what their life is like outside of work, but I can see why they work so well together. They almost like share one mind. It's wild. And so it was very interesting, and they would just come up with stuff, and we just like, you know, kind of join in. And yeah, they're great improvers. I love that. I love improvisation. I love when, you know, and David Zucker let us be us, which is great. You know, you get your lines, you lock them down, and then, you know, when you're able to like give a little flair, give a little more, that to me is a great director, when they just let you kind of go. Because those are the takes they end up usually kind of putting in too, you know? So we just had so much fun. We laughed the whole time. I just remember laughing the whole time.
Oh gosh, that just sounds like a dream come true. Because I'm a big fan of yours, David Zucker. I've had an experience working with him, but really to be like with Matt and Trey, I mean, I could just only imagine what being on set with them all day would be like. And
here's what's funny is I could see them, because they didn't know that I was going to react. They didn't know that they knew that I didn't know about the device, I'll call it.
Right.
And you have to see the movie to find out what the device is in my mom's drawer. They knew that I didn't know. So I could see them around the corner kind of like, you know, but I didn't know what they were doing. Like they were so excited about it. And so when they actually did kind of pull it out and stick it in my face, I was like, what? What's going on? And I could hear David laughing in the background because he knew he was in on it. So I think that's fun. That makes a set fun. And I've said this on many occasions, you know, the director sets the tone. And I've been on sets where, I won't name names, but the director, it's been rough. And you're just really already in an emotional state because you're an actor and you're trying to bring your very best. But when a director sets the tone and you're really comfortable and they give you an environment that is conducive to you being able to really nail it, it makes such a difference, as I'm sure you understand too. Having won Best Actor, I'm going to throw that in like 10 times. I had a question when I saw that and I read that. You won that award in 2019 for Mayhem of the Mind. Yeah. And then we kind of, you know, as an actor, you win awards and you get calls and you kind of get this momentum and this thing going, right? How was that for you heading into COVID after that?
Like I did some acting as a kid and then did some modeling. Went to college, I got a communications degree, studied cinema. I started working at William Morris and I got into voiceover after I graduated college. And then I was working with someone who was working with Joan Jett, and they had just done the Runaways movie and they wanted to produce more movies. So they said, you know, Kash, so I did this movie called Undateable John with Shannon Doherty and Estella Warren, and Joan was in it. And then I did their other movie, Jack and Cocaine. Jack and Cocaine came out in like 2014, 15, but Undateable John, we shot that around that time. They were trying to get a distribution deal. So that was something that there was a clip of me and Shannon that got out. So I kept getting asked about it. I'm like, oh, you know, I think it might be in a festival. So I kept doing these other projects. And then right when it was 2019, right when all that was happening, Undateable John finally got released. And then it was like we had all these other things written and ready to go. And then the pandemic and everything stops. I had like, you know, 10 years of security. And then it's all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I'm becoming a gig worker again. I had been getting into podcasts. Like I was working with comedians on another pilot, and I started going to the Comedy Store, and, you know, like Rogan would show up, Whitney Cummings would show up, and all these people who had podcasts. And so then we started the On Air with Kash. And then I just feel like everything kind of rolls into another thing. So if one thing's not working out, I'm going to go do. And then just lately, more cinema stuff's coming around. So I feel like you and I feel like we follow that path where we go with what's happening. Your podcast, the Cory Oliver Effect.
Yeah, you know, there was so much going on at that time, and I've said this a million times. It's you, when you're a creative mind, you can't just be still. It's very difficult to not be creative, for me anyway, and I'm sure you can attest to that.
It's hard to keep me still.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, there was a lot of controversy going on in the world at the time, and everybody was divided. And my goal in life, and I've taught my daughter, I have a 24-year-old daughter, I've taught her to be inclusive, no matter what. You can have your belief. I can believe that I'm a Christian and my political beliefs, but at the end of the day, you know, we're supposed to love one another. And so unity is important for me. And I wanted to create something where, you know, people could come together of all walks of life. We don't have to agree. We don't have to be the same person. We don't have to have our same, you know, faith and thoughts. But at the end of the day, we can talk about it. We can respect each other and love one another. And so I wanted to bring this whole thing, you know, together. And so the Cory Oliver Effect was kind of created in my kitchen. My daughter thought of the name. And the producer, Bob Victor, and I worked tirelessly and effortlessly to create, we did 100 episodes and we're on hiatus right now. So I just needed, it's a lot, as you know, to put into.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a lot. It is a lot, but it's fun. And I promised myself when I started it, because I was heading into a new career. I had never been a host. I've been interviewed, but I wasn't a host. And so I really have respect for hosts. And it was so much fun being on the other side, because, I just think people are fascinating. And when you can understand why they chose, a role, or to write what they wrote, or, it gives them a voice. And that's so important. That's why they're doing it, so they can have a voice to affect others in a positive way. So it was so much fun.
I've been interviewed and I get the host thing. I've been hired to do like some stuff at film festivals, and it's like, my thing is like, I love artists. And so sometimes there's someone who I just meet and I click with, or there's someone whose work I've admired for a long time. Like, oh my gosh, we get to have a conversation. And then you're in that category too, where it's like, I know exactly who you are. I've seen your movies growing up. And then you realize, wow, we have a lot of things in common and parallels. When there's that history and that angle, then it's like we can tell those stories that we have like behind the scenes, or just what we were going through. It's because it is a journey, and I'm just fascinated by people. One of my mentors was Michael Rosenbaum. He played Lex Luthor on Smallville. I started working with him right before the pandemic, and he turned me on to his podcast, Inside of You, with Michael Rosenbaum. And so he's kind of like getting inside of his guests, and it's just, he had like so many fascinating conversations with our mutual friend Beverly D'Angelo, who's also been on our show. And just really, when you talk about her history and these eras of comedy that she went through. So I mean, that's what I like too. And I love good dialogue, good conversation.
Beverly D'Angelo, just to talk about her for 1 minute, she is like the epitome of triple threat. I knew her from Vacation and all the movies that she was just incredible in. But I went to go see her one night at the Viper Room. This was like 30 years ago.
We talked about this on our interview, but yes, she talked about this show. Go ahead.
I was like, are you kidding? Her voice is amazing. I have no idea she's sang. And it just blew my mind. I was sitting there just going, no way. Like, you can do anything you want to do if you just put your mind to it. And, we oftentimes say, okay, well, I'm an actress, I have to stay in this lane. No, you don't. You don't have to stay in that lane. You don't have to. You can be creative. And there's many forms of being creative. And I just was, hats off to her. She's one of my favorites. And my best friend that I talked about earlier, her and I we were in a band at the time called Purple Hearts. So we were looking at, Beverly on stage, just thinking, wow, she's just nailing it. And what a voice. What a voice.
What a voice, what a talent. Speaking of a voice and a talent, you actually have an album, music video coming up, Rise and Shine, Lord.
It's called Rise Up and Shine, Lord. I decided a few years ago to dive into my some writing songs for God. And I'm not getting preachy. That's my path and my journey. And so I've taken some of the pain that I've gone through and just written and put it on paper, because a lot of the things I've gone through, God has really helped me get through them. At the end of the day, when you're at home alone and you're in the fetal position crying, it's really you and God. And so, me and God for myself. And so I wrote a song called I'm Somebody's Daughter, and that was a painful time in my life. And I released that in 2018 or 19, I can't remember. And I recently wrote a new song called Rise Up and Shine, Lord, and I just finished the video a couple days ago. They're editing it, and then I will be releasing that in a couple of weeks whenever the video is done. And it's about the armor of God, the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the sword of the Spirit, the belt of truth, and the sandals of peace. It's scripture. And the funny thing is, and you'll love this, this is a great Hollywood story. I was trying to think of a theme for this song. Do I go and put armor on? Do I go stand there with a sword? And it just seemed a little hokey. So I went to this costume shop, and I was explaining the video to the woman who owns the costume shop, and she goes in the, she goes, I have the perfect thing for you. And she goes in the back and she comes out with the Xena costume.
Xena Warrior Princess?
Yes, but Kash, this is where it's so crazy. It's like, it was amazing because it was between Lucy Lawless and myself for Xena.
Wow.
A full circle moment, right? And I remember the producers bringing me into the office and sitting me down. I was sitting on the corner of this couch. I remember it vividly, and they were like so kind and they were so nice, but they said, you know, we got to go with Lucy. She has more of the body type for this. You're more, you know, I just didn't have that, you know, and Lucy did. She's perfect. She was beautiful and was amazing in that role. And I had to concede even in the moment because, you know, I knew who she was and I just was in awe, but it came down to that. And so I had this full circle moment with this costume that was brought out to me for my video. I tried it on and no, it just didn't work. And then it was like, I understood all those years later why, you know, it wasn't right. And so, you know, there are times in everyone's life and career, no matter what career you're in, that you get frustrated and sad, you really wanted it. And there's always a plan, there's always a purpose, there's always, you know, a path. And it just wasn't for me. But in this moment of recreating, you know, this video or creating this video, I had a full circle moment of, oh yeah, this is why, you know, it wasn't just the body type. It was a understanding, a weird understanding. And so I did not wear the Xena costume in my in my video, but it will be out soon. And you know, I'm not trying to be a singer. I'm just being creative and making music that I feel will hopefully inspire people and, you know, encourage them. And, you know, we're in difficult times, Kash, as you know. And so if you can lean on something other than, you know, the negativity that's out there, then, you know, there's hope and there's a future.
And you brought up something interesting too, where it is, because it's like, I feel like you lead more with heart and passion than just the end result. Like you have to be very invested in what you do, and you do give you do put, you know, your faith into a higher power. And I mean, you know, me, I suffered a lethal arrhythmia at the gym when I was 22.
Like
My heart basically stopped. I mean, I was at the gym, I was overdoing it. Like there was a lot going on, and just I was finishing school, working full time. My parents were going. It was just, there was a lot happening in my world. So I fall over. They say this angelic woman saw me. No one has seen her since. She alerted. They just put defibrillators in there 6 weeks before. That one of the only employees who wasn't supposed to be working just so happened to be there in training, a producer for ER True Stories, who just an episode about defibrillators. So, I mean, you come out of an experience like that. I believe that there is a higher power, and I look at everything in my life, because sometimes, you know, we do get hard on ourselves or as artists, if somebody, but I look at everything that doesn't work out and it gave me strength for something else. And I've had so many full circle moments I mean, we could save this for another conversation because it'll get a lot more deep, but it's
that is incredible though, because I really believe, I'm sure, I mean, we have angels, we have guardian angels, and that's incredible. That's an incredible story, and thank God you're here. What a blessing. Oh my gosh. So did you have open heart surgery, or
no, they couldn't find anything wrong with me. So I have a defibrillator. It's the size of a Zippo lighter. It's under my pec muscle. I don't even know it's there. So it's basically, I just can't die of a heart attack.
Gosh, how old? You were 22?
That's what.
Oh my gosh, God bless you. That's amazing. I mean, that's really, truly, do you remember being under? Do you remember anything about that moment? I'm always curious what happens, you know, in that moment when you black out and you don't, you know.
Yeah, so what had happened was, again, like I'm very fortunate for so much in life, but there was some stuff started to happen, you know, when I was 15 in like the early 2000s, and just really being in a lot of adult situations, not really having the tools, and was just trying to navigate life. And, you know, so there was a lot of stuff that I was dealing with that I wasn't, you know, that I wasn't getting the proper help for, I should say. And so by the time this happened, I had just been, you know, I was killing myself, like trying to get through college and then working full time. And then, you know, just I love my family, but there's, you know, just family stuff comes up. So then just where I was emotionally, I was just a wreck. And I had this, you know, because like I said, it's hard for me to sit still. So it's like, I'm going to go, you know, put 12-hour day in, and then I'm going to go do this and that. And I mean, I was just burning the candle at both ends. And I had, so, you know, I go to the gym, and I remember just feeling like, you know, I'm not here. Why am I doing this. I'm like, I'm gonna go do some sit-ups and that'll be it. And then, so, you know, I fall over. I just remembered a massive head rush, and then I kind of curled up. Next thing I know, I'm out. And then I just remembered like there was kind of like a light, there was like a light silhouette. And I do remember hearing some voices, and there was this kind of calm, soothing, like, I felt like I was finally at peace and I could have gone one way. And then all of a sudden I realized I felt something, and then I wake up and have people, and I'm like, what just happened? And then the guy who I know now, Brian, who revived me, he was explaining the situation. And so then, you know, we went, I mean, I felt like I was ready to just get up and go. Like, I just felt like I was reborn again almost. And then when I talked to Brian and the other woman who revived me, who's the producer for Your True Stories, you know, and I listened to what they were saying, like basically they said the angelic woman saw me, I fell over, I was going into like a seizure, and then all of a sudden and then they started giving me CPR. Brian had just learned how to use the defibrillator. They put it on me. Or no, I'm sorry, wait. I'm sorry. I think they gave me CPR, and then they said I turned blue, and then I was like, and then I was just gone. Then they put the defibrillator on me. Then I think they zapped me twice, and then I came back. And then, but when they were talking, and then I think those were some of the voices. But I did feel like that kind of, because I did feel, I mean, where I was emotionally at the time, I felt like I could have just been like, you know what, I've had enough. It's been wild, and
it's interesting that you say that, because I've known a lot of people that have had this incident, and you know, one of them is my ex-husband, another one is my stepdad, and I have read a book called Imagine Heaven, and it's about 1,000 people that had near-death experiences, and I would call this a near-death experience for you. I don't know what you would call it, but that sounds like it.
Oh no.
And in that moment, the reason why I asked you, because I think 1,000 out of 1,000 people said they would have been fine going and just staying where they were headed. That's how beautiful it was, and how peaceful it was, and the feeling that they got. And so I'm always, you know, when you said that, I wonder in that moment how you felt. And, you know, God obviously was like, nope, I have lots of plans for you. I have lots of plans for you. But so you ended up getting a permanent, like a pacemaker.
They couldn't find anything wrong with me. So I mean, I can't even feel it. But
that's amazing. And to your point, you know, when there's a lot of stuff going on in our lives, disease is dis-ease. I've had causal chondritis before. It acts as though you're having a heart attack, but it's not an actual heart attack. And I didn't pass out and have a near-death experience at all. But my experience was that of, I felt like I was having a heart attack. I was holding everything inside. And you know, as you were young, I mean, that's a lot to hold in, whatever you were holding in. And I don't think we're meant to carry that. And that's why I say to you, and going back to the songs that I've written, I cast my burdens upon him, upon God. And I get it out now in songs or books or writing or whatever, or poems or whatever. But I believe, and I think I teach my daughter this, it's imperative that you get it out. Disease is dis-ease. It can manifest in different organs of your body or different areas of your body. And so I feel like it is really important that you talk about it or write about it, or, you know, do what you have to do. But I, for one, am very happy that you are here. And, you know, you are, I'm sure, you know, many others, but, you know, there's a plan and a purpose. It's Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not harm you, to give you hope on the future. And obviously you have that. So thank you for sharing that story. That's unexpected, but such a beautiful, you know, journey.
Well, thank you. No, and I'm glad to be here and doing what I'm doing. And I think it ties into just what we were talking about with faith, and then just really fun, because even like I felt like starting the show, one of the things I did want to do is really to like open up, and I've had different discussions. I've talked about this before in other interviews as it ties into themes where I've talked to people with out-of-body experiences and just loss, because I felt like a big thing was loss. And I mean, there were just a lot of friends who picked different paths in life or made some unhealthy choices that aren't with us anymore. And it was just weird because so many people there were like 3 people that I was close with who died within the span of 3 years. And then when I died, I ended up coming back. And then exactly 13 years later, a cousin who I was very close with, he struggled with a lot of this. He had a lot of the same experiences that I had growing up. We both had similar environments. And once he reached a certain age, we were able to talk, you know, and he was asking me questions because he knew I'd been through it. So we got a lot closer when we were both in our 20s. And during the pandemic, it was like exactly 13 years after it happened to me. He unfortunately left us. And so it was just, when I look at the people who have come and gone, and I mean, even this year alone, there's been, yeah, there had been some losses, but even with that, it's like you look for like the closure, you look at, you could acknowledge the times that you've had together, why this person was in your life and what lessons you've learned, and you can cherish your memories.
Yeah, I think that's well said. That's exactly it. There's a reason too. And it's just, I can't imagine going through that. I can't. It's incredible.
I mean, I love your vibe. I love, you keep pushing forward in any endeavor that you do. You and I can sit here and talk for hours just about life, career, art. And I'm just really fascinated by your story, the work that you've done. Is there anything else that you want to mention to your audience or shout out there?
I'm just grateful for them. I mean, when you start in this business, I wasn't, I'll have my full circle moment in your interview. I'll go back to the Katharine Hepburn documentary. She said all she wanted to do was be famous. That's all she wanted to do was be famous. And she was, and she is, and she's amazing. I, however, just wanted to act, and that part didn't really appeal to me because I was teased as a kid, horribly teased as a kid for my features, and just beyond like teased. And so I really had a hard time, I struggled with the juxtaposition. Like, here I want to be on camera and be in front of the world, but I'm also like, okay, in my mind I'm on camera, and in my mind I'm picking myself apart. I got fish eyes, and I got all kinds of horrible names that kids can call you. And so it's almost like it was cathartic, this journey that I've taken, because now I'm at this place where I don't even think about those things anymore. It's not about, being famous. It's about having a voice, helping someone. If you have an audience of one and you can help that one person, then your audience of one is a blessing, right? It doesn't matter. And so I feel like, the acting part, there's nothing like it, Kash, as you know, having won Best Actor. I'm putting that in there again. Nailing a scene is amazing, right? When you really connect in that scene, and all the direction comes to life, all the content comes to life, it's amazing. But at the end of the day, it's really what you can do behind the camera, how you affect people on set, what you do out in the world. If somebody sees it and they can identify and it helps them, that's all worth it. That's all the blessing in it. And so even though my family was like, wait, what? You want to go act? I feel like I did it, and I did not compromise my beliefs and not that people, I had my own things that I was willing to do and not do. And which doesn't make them right or wrong in any other scenario. It's just my personal, right? We have our own personal journey. And I feel like I've done it and accomplished it, and I'm grateful. So
you have it. It's like, and look at the work that you've done. I mean, you've worked with some of the top producers, you've worked with some of the top talent, and you've created your own content, and you put your beliefs into what you're doing. And because I know I've watched your show and I've seen how you connect with your audience, and I feel like, and you brought up something interesting too about, certain people, they just want to be famous. And I feel like, because even my earliest memories, I was just always drawing. I was like recreating scenes from Back to the Future or Ninja Turtles or whatever. Like those, oh yeah, I mean, we had like the Ghostbusters proton packs and everything. Like we just loved performing. And then it was, it really, and that's the interesting thing about like when I was on the set of Naked Gun and everything, because it was right around the time I was like understanding about members of my family and everything. And so it was like when at that particular time, I was really starting to understand like who Elvis was and what the connection was and everything like that. So then again, you have like the OJ situation, then it's, my cousin, and then like right during that time, my cousin marries Michael Jackson. Then that's another thing that happens that summer. And then of course you go to the playground and kids are teasing. And because of, if you were around back then, you knew the accusations, and I'm 9 years old. So of course people are gonna, what's he, and nothing happened. I met him one time, but I started feeling uncomfortable when I was a kid. Like I felt like I just was like in my zone when I was editing something or creating. And then there was like, I think as time went on too, with reality or certain reality TV where it was like everything was about fame and then eventually, getting likes and hits. And I feel like that's a little bit of where I got steered off, because when I was 15 and I was pursuing it, there were a lot of people trying to be like, oh, we know you're connected to so-and-so. So there were a lot of people who didn't have my best interests and were just trying to make me something that I didn't want to be. And then you have a lot of these other influences in your mind, and it took me a long time, and I think I bought into it. And I feel like a lot of times, like the heart thing, I just really bought into it, like that I wasn't good enough, or that I needed to be compared to certain other people, or and then I feel like I didn't have my own identity, and I felt like the more like started making my own films when I had that second chance after the heart thing, it was like when I wanted to be more creative again, I could start seeing those same negative forces that were around when I was a kid. And then as I got older, and once I was happy doing what I was doing, like making movies, and like you said, it's like, it's like really just being on set, making everyone else's lives better. And that's where I feel like and I got to be honest, since 2014, I walked away from a situation that wasn't good, and I haven't looked back. And I mean, every year just gets better.
Tell me, that inspires me, that sentence that you just said. Tell me when you said that, because I think that's an important lesson for all ages. You said it, when I walked away from a situation that wasn't that good. Tell me how you did that, the steps that you took, and how you came to that, finality of it, because a lot of people stay in them.
Yeah.
And it damages your soul, your health, your mind, your spirit. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive.
It was a force that was around since I was a kid, and there's certain family members and people encouraged me to be around that. At times you think, oh, it's great one-on-one, but then you realize, oh, this person has a different agenda for doing something nice. And when I had the arrhythmia, I was in that environment with that person who I felt like was pulling strings a lot when I was younger. And things were good for a while, but then when I started doing those two movies, like with Joan Jett's, like Undateable John Jack and Cocaine, I was feeling myself, and I'm like, this is the Kash I've always wanted to be. And then it was the person who I felt saved me after the arrhythmia was kind of questioned, like, oh, are you okay? Do you feel you're okay? Because you don't seem okay. And it was all these games that were played with me when I was a kid, like making me question things, then manipulating situations for themselves. It was like, and honestly, there'd been a few things, there's stuff out there now that people are really starting to see what it's, now that certain people in my life have left, and kind of the aftermath of that, I think people are getting a full idea of what I've had to go through the last couple of years. So for me, it was really just leaving a bad situation, it was just an unhealthy, it was soul crushing. And then once I said, you know what, I don't need this. I don't need to be linked to this.
Was there a defining moment? I'm sorry. Was there like a defining moment? Because we as people can drag those moments on, and in our mind, it's toxic, right? It's just, I'm sorry, my dog is barking. It can really mess with you. And so was that like a defining moment where you just said, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done, I'm moving forward? And
it was that moment. I had a schedule, I had something to do, and then this person was gaslighting me, questioning, are you okay? You sure you're okay? And it was the last time I walked, and the next day I just had a one-on-one, I thanked this person for what they meant, but it was just time to move on. I left. I never felt freer. I just felt like I could be my own person. And that it's the bizarre thing too, is just the people who aren't with us anymore. Like Lisa dies this year, and I hadn't seen the Elvis movie until like 5 days before. He won within a week, finding some closure with some of those people. And I felt fine, but then it was like, surely enough, when I come back, the same people who are trying to bring you back in, I'm like, no, I'm not going, not going back. And then,
that's a test. That's a test, is because it'll come back at you again, maybe in a different form, maybe in a same form. And the whole test is to be able to just say no and kindly walk away. I mean, you don't have to link your caboose to, a train that's going to derail. You just don't have to. Yeah.
So there was that, and then there was also something that I don't know if you heard about, like the Danny Masterson case, or if
Yes.
Lisa was friends with him, and it was right like at that time of 15 when I started hanging out with Lisa, and it's like, that was when the 70s show was really hot, and I remember that the atmosphere was like an episode of Entourage. The stuff that he got accused and now convicted of, I didn't hear that he was doing that, but it was weird because I just found out that I knew I knew the girlfriend, and because she was around during that time, but then the other two people, the Jane Does, I found out their identities, and it was just because I remembered like having, when you're like in that, and I just remember the environment, and it was just really, for me, it was like I was, a teenager, and I'm with like a lot of these people in their 20s, and I felt like that kid from Almost Famous, where you're just kind of like, all these people are like telling you you're cool, and And, you know, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened, and I know a few friends who died who were in that crowd, and a lot of people who aren't there. And I mean, two people I knew died within a year of each other right before my heart thing. So it was just a really weird thing to like lose Lisa, and then to see that verdict like within the last 4 months was just another thing where you're just like, what's, you know.
It was a shock. It seems just odd. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was very odd and sad, very sad.
Yeah.
It just, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's just, I don't even know what to make of some of these things, because I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel in my gut we don't really hear everything. You know,
Exactly.
we don't know everything that's going on, and it's interesting. And you know, at the last few documentaries that I've watched, Marilyn Monroe, Katharine Hepburn, all, you know, it goes back to, you know, and they're open about it in these documentaries about the casting couch, the little black book, the things that transpired that I was never presented with. It says religious zealot, even though I'm not. But I think they quickly see who's who, and you know, and so I don't know. It's just an interesting time. There's so much information coming out, and you know, I say proceed with caution, right? Because we don't know what's real and what's not. There are no words for that situation.
For me, I think it was just losing a lot of people in that group and walking away from that group years ago, and just kind of knowing something wasn't right with things that were happening. And then it was just, and then, you know, but then the closure is like, and I'm not saying like I'm happy about what's going to happen to him or certain people, but there was just kind of this feeling of not him directly, but people in that group kind of gaslighting you, saying certain things are okay, putting you in situations, and then remembering friends who were in situations who died around that time. And again, you know, because you look at, there's a family that's affected, there's kids that are going to be affected because of this, there were victims. I feel like my life's been like one big lost episode. It's like, you know, you look at like the heart thing, and then Ben dying 13 years later, and then it's like Lisa and Masterson within this. I mean, you had told me 20 years ago this would happen. It was like I would not have foresaw that. I guess where I'm going with this is just, I feel like, you know, we've both been in those situations and been and seen a lot, but I think that we're both in very good places now. We've survived, and you know, Cory, I just really I admire you. You put your faith into it, and you're very grounded, and I just love your spirit, and I really can't. I'm really glad that we got to do this, and I can't wait to have till we talk about our future endeavors and where we're going and stuff like that. So really, Cory, it's just been a pleasure. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Thank you so much. No, I'm grateful. Thank you. I'm glad that we got to connect too, and not just on a carpet or, you know, passing, and maybe we'll even work together one day in a movie. I mean, I'm not best actor, but
I do all right. Hey, I think if you put the two of us in something, you'll definitely upstage me.
oh, I don't think so. But you know, I will say something to that. You know, in this industry, I've been only nominated for a Grace Award. So having been, you know, one Best Actor in LA, I'm going to keep clapping on that, Kash. And I see great things in your future. You're amazing. You're timeless. You haven't aged at all. And your spirit, just so you know, when we did run into each other, you know, you shine. And I'm not just saying that. This is not a mutual admiration society. This is just from one person to another. Even if you weren't in front of the camera, you shine. And so God has an amazing plan for you. And I'm so excited to see what that is. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm excited to see what he has for you, for both of us.
Thanks, Kash.